Have you heard of a city called Drybell? It is right in the middle of the desert, surrounded by red hills, fine sand, and iron rails that time tried to cover with rust and silence. Nowadays, no one to there. Neither traveler nor train. But there was a time when the city boiled by life. And also stories that no one could explain right. One of them, the oldest and most spoken among those who still remember, is the bride of the season. They say that every night, exactly midnight, a woman appears on the old season platform. She dresses in white, is always on her back, immovable, as if waiting for someone. No one sees her coming. No one sees her out. But those who pass by ensure that she is there. Always. This story begins in 1880-3, when Drybell was still a busy point between the diligence routes and the first rails of the West. The city was small but prosperous. It had church, saloon, barber shop, grocery store, and, high on the main street, a train station that brought news and outsiders. This is how Benjamin Colton arrived. A man of calm speech and looking straight, who said he works for an Eastern Railway company. He had plans to expand the rails to the mountains and turn Drybell into a city of connection. Promised progress, jobs, and wealth. Soon it won the confidence of many. In the heart of Eleanor Grace Whitmore, the only daughter of the oldest grocery store owner in the region. Eleanor was all that was expected of a well-created girl, polite, modest, and owner of a beauty that made men look away just so they don't seem sassy. The wedding was scheduled for the end of summer. The whole city was invited. The chapel was full even before the bells touched. Reverend was waiting. Eleanor's father was nervous but proud. Eleanor entered dressed in white, with a simple bouquet made of field flowers. And then, they waited. And waited. But the groom did not come. The chapel clock was 2 in the afternoon when the bells stopped playing. The guests murmured with each other. First discreetly, then already at a tone of concern. The priest closed the Bible slowly. Eleanor's father was looking at the front door as if he still expected to see him in. But Benjamin Colton did not enter. It was not seen that day. Neither for acquaintances nor for strangers. No horse was sealed in your hostel. No luggage has been removed. No one heard his steps on the boards of the street. It was as if it had disappeared from the whole city. Eleanor didn't say a word. It didn't even cry. It didn't even shout it. Just came out the chapel door, still with the wedding dress, the crumpled bouquet in her hands. The crowd opened in silence. Some cringed at the expression on her face, which was neither pain nor despair. It was for sure. She knew where he would have gone. Or maybe, where he wanted her. He walked down the dirt road to the station. He went through saloons, the stable, for the forge, without looking at anyone. The ladies of the church whispering behind the curtains. The men took their hats to their passage. And no one dared to say a word. The station was deserted, as it was always on Sunday afternoons. The last train had left the previous morning. The next one would only pass by 2 days. Even so, Eleanor sat on the wooden bench under the roof. The hours passed. The white dress, once targeted and clean, was getting dusty. The flowers dried in their hands. The sun hid behind the hills. The wind began to hit the east, as it always did on dry nights. And even when the darkness covered Drybell, she didn't leave. Some say they saw strange lights on the horizon that night. Others say that, around midnight, they heard a distant whistle. Weak, almost whispered. No train was scheduled. But all dogs started barking. And the horses stirred in the stables. A boy who lived near the station swore he saw a locomotive pass without stopping. Black wagons. No light on. No visible driver. He also said that, when looking at the platform, he didn't see the girl in white anymore. The next morning the city woke up with the news. Eleanor Grace Whitmore was disappeared. His dress was found hanging in the iron railing, still damp dew. The flowers, carefully placed on the bank. But no sign of the young woman. Neither footprints, nor trails, no witnesses. Just the silence. Her father offered a reward to those who found his daughter. He hired men to look for the hills on the banks of the river and even in the abandoned mines. No trail. The weeks passed, and with them came fear. Drybell got silent. The children stopped playing on the streets at dusk. The station was closed indefinitely. No one spoke Eleanor's name aloud. And as for Benjamin Colton, well, no one has ever heard of him again. The pension where he had stayed was overturned. The documents he had presented to the city burned without anyone knowing how. Some people started wondering if he was really the one who claimed to be. If it had arrived by train or if it simply appeared. That's when the rumors began. The first to speak was a lumberjack, returning from a night delivery. He said he saw someone standing at the station, even with the rails disabled. A white woman with her veil covering her face. He said he called for her. There was no answer. But when it approached, she disappeared. The following week, 2 teenagers who bet the courage went there shortly before midnight. They laughed, threw stones on the rails, challenged the fear. One of them was never the same. He stopped talking and walked the streets carrying a dry bouquet. After that, no one else dared to approach the station. Some residents swore hear steps on moonless nights. Others saw a distant, immobile figure looking in the direction where the trains used to come. The city was withering slowly. Trades closed, families moved. The prayers in the churches began to mention protection against forces that were not named. The station has become a forbidden place. A point out of time. And yet, every night, at the same time, even without rails working, even without machines, without drivers or passengers, something seemed to move between the fine mist that covered the desert. No one knew what would happen if anyone decided to wait there too. Or if she would finally stop waiting. 30 years have passed since that night Eleanor disappeared. And Drybell became just one point forgotten on the map. Abandoned houses, broken windows, dust covering everything. The season remained standing, firm as if time had no courage to knock it over. But no one approached. No one lived around. It was as if the whole city was left in silence, just for her to continue there, waiting. But then, in a muffled late afternoon, a man descended from an old wagon, just meters from the old entrance of the city. It was called Jonah Miller. He was a journalist of a smaller Arizona newspaper and was researching legends of the forgotten West. He had heard stories whispered on taverns and bonfires. About Drybell. About a bride who disappeared on the wedding night. And about a white figure waiting for a train that never arrived. Jonah had the habit of going to the end in everything he wrote. And as much as they warned him not to go to the season, he insisted. It came close to 8 in the night. The sun was already hiding behind the dried hills, and the sky gained shades of rust and coal. Jonah set up camp just meters from the tracks. He carried a notebook, a crank recorder, and a small lamp. Everything I needed. Time has passed slowly. The wind howled between the wooden slats. The crickets suddenly silenced. And when the clock scored 11 and 50-8, Jonah heard steps. Slow. Regular. Light. He looked at the station. She was there. Dressed in white. Pale under the moonlight. The veil covering the face. Stop, as they had described, on the edge of the platform. Waiting. Jonah approached slowly, his hand shaking over the notebook. He tried to speak, but his voice failed. When finally he managed to release the words, he asked, "Are you Eleanor?" The figure did not respond. Just turned slowly. For a moment the veil moved with the wind. And Jonah saw his eyes. Sad. Empty. Old. But alive. As if they still expected something that never came. It was then that the light appeared. On the horizon, a distant headlight cut the darkness. A train approached. But there were no active rails. No engine sound, no vibration on the floor. Still, Jonah heard the whistle. The same as the city had heard so many years before. And then she got out of the platform. He walked toward nothingness. But where there was no ground, his feet did not sink. Where there was no rail, she went firm, as if she knew the way. The lighthouse approached. Strong, white, blinding. And at the next moment, everything went out. When Jonah woke up, it was morning. He was lying next to his notebook, still open. The lamp erased. And before the season, where there was nothing before, now there was a mark on the floor. As if invisible rails had passed by. And in the wooden bench of the station, a bouquet. Dry. Yellowish. Same as stories. Jonah returned to the nearest city without saying a word. He wrote an article titled The Last Drybell Train, but never published. Just left the notebook at the bottom of a drawer and never touched the subject again. They say that after that night, the figure of white was never seen at the station. That the city, although still abandoned, seems less heavy. As if something there had finally followed a trip. But no one knows for sure. Because, from time to time, on moonless nights, it is still possible to hear a distant whistle. A sound that comes out of nowhere and gets lost in the desert. Maybe she's still waiting. Or maybe it's just the next bride. Did you like this story? Then subscribe now to the channel so as not to lose the next Old West tale where legends, secrets, and destinations intersect under the sunset. New stories every week. Because in the West, no one knows what can come in the next curve of the road.